can see results. Should be.
Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
Hi, so we're going to talk about the first and second episode of Hawkeye this evening, which debuted earlier today. As always, what we're going to do is go through our spoiler-free thoughts about the episodes and then get into spoiler talk. Alright, so before we do that, let me read a short description of the episode. So the episodes are, the first one is named Never Meet Your Heroes, and the second one is Hide and Seek. This brief spoiler-free summary of the first episode is Archer Kate Bishop lands in the middle of a criminal conspiracy forcing Hawkeye out of retirement. And the second and the summary for the second episode really doesn't spoil much in the first episode. It just says Clint has to help Kate disentangle herself from the tracksuit mafia and a real life murder mystery. So the tracksuit mafia, everyone has probably seen in the in the trailers for the show. So Colin, I guess spoiler free, what did you think of the two episodes?
Yeah, so far I think that it's a solid start overall. I think that there are some elements to it that reminds you of the Marvel Netflix show. I think that there's definitely some things that Kevin Feige really liked about the Marvel Netflix show and saw its success. And so I think this is probably the closest of all the other streaming shows, closest to that type of feel. I mean, just by looking at certain elements of it, it just does feel that way. Just by the way that they shot it, the way that the action is ran, the way that they kind of put humor in it. Although if I remember correctly, in terms of the Marvel Netflix show, they were more dramas rather than really like some type of like quippy type of things. And there are several parts to it that was very quippy. But overall, I say that's like I said, it's a really, really solid start. There's only 6 episodes, so we only get about another month of it, and then we're going to go right into the Book of Boba Fett. So this is a kind of a nice type of holiday feel to the whole thing. And again, it brings up a lot of, if you've ever been to New York during the holidays, it's actually really, really nice. And it kind of reminds me, I lived in New York for 6 years, so it definitely has that type of holiday cheer to it, even wrapped around a Marvel movie. So I think it was a good marketing strategy on their part to release it during this time when it's the beginning of the holidays, as well as just kind of like it's a good kind of reprieve every week that you see this type of thing going. And again, also for Hawkeye, we get to kind of see what happens to him post Endgame, and the fact and just certain types of things that are going on with his life after that. So in all, definitely pretty solid. But I'm looking forward to seeing what's next, though.
Yeah, I like the episode as well. I'm trying to see whether or not it's like a recommendation. So like the sticking point that I have is that it is Thanksgiving tomorrow. So I guess my short and sweet recommendation is that, like, if you don't like your family, you should it's a good way to distract yourself. But if you do and you want to spend time with your family, you can probably wait until Friday or the weekend. It's an okay start. It's a good start. Some of these episodes are a little slow for me. I think, as you said, kind of like Netflixy. There is action. But it's a slower start than, say, Falcon and the Winter Soldier got off to, and also sort of Loki as well. Even though even Loki as well, because it was a little bit, I think, more focused and a little bit more tightly written. That being said, I still like the episodes, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next, because they kind of ended on a cliffhanger, as these Marvel shows do, at the end of episode 2. I appreciate Hailee Steinfeld's work. She really kind of pops, and she's really likable in these first two episodes. Uh, it focuses more on her than it does on Clint Barton for I
Hmm.
guess a couple reasons. Because you don't know who she is, so you kind of have to establish who she is and why you would want to follow her. In addition to Clint, because you know a lot more about Clint. You know less about Clint than some other Avengers because he didn't get a movie or and he's been kind of in the background, but he's been there since Thor. So he's been there
Hmm.
since Phase One. And if you haven't watched the series on Disney Plus called Marvel Legends, you should check out the workup that they did with about Clint because they actually pull some clips from Black Widow. So if you haven't seen Black Widow, you should probably watch Black Widow first to give additional context because Black Widow taught in that movie she mentions Clint and there's some there all the way through Endgame there are clips giving context to his backstory. There, I mean, there are a couple other actors of note here. There we have uh, Vera Farmiga
Hmm.
from the what's the horror movies that she's in? Do you remember
Was she in
the
American Horror Story?
no
No.
the horror movies?
Horror movies. I don't quite remember which ones were they. The only thing I
They
remember
came
from her
out.
was from yeah,
One of them came out this year. The
Fear Street. No,
no 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 no
it's not Fear Street, is it? I'm not 100% sure.
I'm completely blanking. It's like a husband and wife team, but I forget what it is off the top of my head. Yeah, so she's I think she's very well known for that, unless I'm missing her up for somewhere else, but I don't think I am. Uh, then and she's she has not a lot to do in these first two episodes, but she definitely makes an impact when she's on the screen. And we see a little bit of Clint's kids in the first couple episodes as well.
Hmm.
But without spoiling anything, I think it's a solid start. But like I said, slow in parts. A little bit of action, not a lot. I did like some of the action beats more than others, and we can get into that when we talk about the spoiler stuff. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a good start. But like I said, if you really like your family, you can probably wait until Friday or Saturday to watch it. If not, it's a good distraction. You probably might need more than just these two episodes to distract you if you don't like your family. So that's my take on the first two episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that yeah, you're right on there. I would definitely try to recommend it in terms of it could be also a family thing as well because I probably will watch it with my family again for the second time. I watched it sometime in the morning this morning because I was able to leave work early,
Yeah,
so I was able to get some time to watch it. But yeah, definitely very interesting. I would recommend it if you're into kind of like the holidays and things like that.
yeah. I mean, like you said, it is set in New York on the holiday, so it might be something to watch with your family. There are definitely some cool family beats. If you've seen the trailers, there are references to like Rogers the musical and stuff like that in the movie. So I'm sorry,
Hmm.
in the episode. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's a recommendation, but like it's a good not great start compare because I'm just comparing it to the other Disney Plus shows,
Hmm.
which kind of hook me. Like WandaVision, I don't, and it really depends on your individual taste because people didn't like the first two episodes of WandaVision because they seemed like they didn't know what was going on. But I just like the weirdness and the
Right.
fact that they committed so thoroughly to like recreating those sitcoms. But
Hmm.
and I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier started off far more action packed
Hmm.
in the very beginning. So yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So without further ado, we should jump into our spoiler talk of the episode. So what I will say is past this point. Well, before that, uh, We appreciate it if you like the video, if you want more conversations like this, or subscribe or follow, depending on whether or not you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, which we're streaming on tonight. All right. So, spoilers ahead. All right. So, what did you think of? I guess let's start with the first episode. So, the first episode starts with a flashback to 2012 Battle of New York, and I guess, and Marvel kind of flashback to this to the Avengers movie a lot. And I guess if this happened in our world, it kind of would be a seminal moment in our, like, it would have changed our world too. So like the fact that it happened in one movie, flashing back to it doesn't bother me as much as I think it bothers other people. Like even if aliens showed up after the first time the alien showed up, I think the first time the alien showed up, it would have been there would have been a lot of repercussions that rippled outward, and you can tell probably 1,000 stories from the fact that the first time the alien showed up, even if, like I said, aliens showed up again later on, or the Sokovia thing, which were the big thing as well, and Thanos snapping again, a big thing. But I think there were probably a lot of ripples that came out of New York. So we get a flashback with Kate in her home in New York, her penthouse apartment with her parents,
living it up.
Yeah,
living it up to the high life in New York City.
And they're having an argument about, because it seems to be these rich people seem to be having money issues, and the mom wants to sell the,
like all rich people do. They have money issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
More money, more problems, right? So the mom wants to sell. Her mom wants to sell the apartment, and her dad does not. From this conversation, we get a couple. We learn a couple things, and this is actually a pretty effective argument for explaining stuff without telling you. So, like, we find out that they have money issues. We find out that he was born into money. She wasn't born into money. We also find out that they hear Kate eavesdropping, and she's like, he's like, "Do you want to go see her?" And she's like, "No, of course not." So we also find out that Kate favors her father from that conversation, which is like I said, it's pretty tight amount of information to get in the first couple minutes, or less than a minute of the episode. So her father goes up. They talk a little bit. He goes downstairs. She bonds a little with her mother, who tries to do like a trick and then she goes back up to her room, and then that's when all the action outside starts, and they do that in all one shot, which is pretty cool directing. I think this episode dragged in certain parts, but I really did appreciate the one shot that they did when they followed Kate throughout the house, with all the explosions happening outside, and then Hawkeye shooting one of the Chitauri cruisers right after, right as it was about to crash into her building, and her amazement at his skills. So what did you make of this? I guess the beginning of this episode.
I mean, it definitely was a really good callback, and again, it forces Disney is very smart to try to force them to watch the Avengers again and then see it from a different perspective. I mean, they did that with Endgame. Now they're doing it with Hawkeye, and it would be very interesting to kind of see in the evolution of Marvel to see those type of repercussions and making some type of show in the future where the Avengers repercussions of what happened to them. What does that translate to? What happened in those 5 years between when Thanos snapped to somewhat regular people. I'm not saying that they are living in high society, so they're not really regular people, to be honest with you. But it'd be very interesting to kind of see what are those dynamics We saw that a little bit in Homecoming with Adrian Toombs, being a working class individual and taking the Shatari technology, making it his own. So we had kind of stuff like that, but it'll be very interesting if Marvel kind of refocuses that to kind of see it from that perspective in a way. They kind of did that with the Netflix shows a little bit, but it was kind of like a little bit of an offshoot. They didn't really know how much they could do. So I really did enjoy the callback, and I really kind of, again, in that first scene, really gives the motivation as to why Kate became who she was, as she got older. So I really, and like just like that kind of awe, starstruck, like Hawkeye being so awesome, like with the arrow falling down the building and then crashing into the office building. I mean that was a great scene in the Avengers, and she was just kind of like, as a kid, you can definitely see, you're totally psyched about it. You want to be like him, so it can definitely you get the sense of kind of like this. In some ways, it reminded me of Spider-Man and Tony Stark. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like that mentorship type of thing going, but it's kind of not forced, but because of circumstances that you'll see in this episode what happens as to why this happened the way it happened. And so, yeah, overall, I think that it also did remind me, the one shot that you're talking about, it did remind me of some of the Netflix one shots that happened in some ways. So that's definitely interesting. And I think, like I said, it definitely leaned into that a little bit more than, say, the previous 3 Marvel Disney Plus series that we've seen.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on the mentorship thing, but I guess you're going to kind of see that a lot in this phase of Marvel, because they're transitioning from the old heroes to the new heroes. So you're going to see it again with Kamala Khan. Probably not in their show, because I doubt what they're going to do is like have Kamala Khan meet Captain Marvel in the show, but she will probably meet her in the Marvels, because she's going to be in that movie.
Right.
And of course, Tony also inspired Riri Williams, who is going to show up in the Black Panther movie. I don't know if that kid from Iron Man 3 is going to show up, but he might show up as Iron Lad, because he definitely was at Tony's funeral in Endgame. So yeah,
right.
It's sort of like a Tony's Peter thing, but they're people look up to basketball players. These people actually saved the world several times, so I'm sure there are a lot of people who look up to them and are on our actual hero. Well, I mean, they are heroes, so they're heroes to them. So you're gonna, I guess, you can tell that story more than one time, and as long as you don't tell it exactly the same way. So yeah,
right, exactly.
I think right after this we get the title sequence where we actually, like you said, he inspires her to push herself to kind of be like him, and I actually really like the title sequence that they just show her progressing and she getting better and better. Like and it also shows that she wasn't like like born to this. She was like, she actually had to progress. Like she was like in 3rd place, and then she got to 1st place, and she got better during the title sequence. That was actually pretty cool. And it actually has the same art as the Hawkeye comic book. I think done by Max Factor. I think his name is
Matt Fraction.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. And you said something else about the one shot. It'll come to me later on.
In some ways it's kind of related to some of the Netflix stuff, especially Daredevil. You saw a lot of that one shot stuff going on.
It definitely. So like, I think this is a little bit more elaborate than the hallway scene, because because
that's what I was thinking about.
because they have more money than the Netflix shows do. But yeah, they definitely did it in. It didn't seem like there was any cuts there, so it was pretty good. There was a little bit of a continuity error that someone pointed out. The Stark Tower. So the Stark Tower, think the A gets blown off, but when you see it out the window, like the wrong letter is blown off. So I guess
Oh, really?
they missed that in the continuity issue.
Well, I would forgive them for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely remember that happening. That
Yeah.
that the A stays, but the rest of the letters get blown off.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the Avengers. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and so like after that, what we get a jump to the present day, and we actually at the beginning we were using the same font that they used in the Avengers movie when they went back to 2012, and then they changed the font to the Hawkeye font when they said present day. So the same font as the logo for the show that you see below my head. They have the present day, and I guess that's going to be the font for any of their title sequences in the show.
Right.
So present day, Clint is spending time with his three kids in New York. They catch a show. Roger's the musical.
Roger's the musical.
And they see the Rockefeller Christmas tree. But yeah, the Roger's the musical thing is interesting for a couple reasons. Like he's definitely doing it for his kids, because that's something he would definitely go. He doesn't care about, like he said, he even turned off his hearing aid because because like he says to his daughter, he was there, so he knows how it ends. Like everyone knows how it ends. So so yeah, and also it was also apparently they just just inserted Ant-Man into the thing.
Yeah, they did.
Which is good. Go ahead.
But I was wondering, at that point, whether or not they would have gotten into the more like mental health aspect of it, because you're kind of going into a show. Yeah, it's lighthearted and stuff like that, and there's not much action in terms of like the action of like people getting killed and things like that. But like you said, is he lived through it, so it's like, are you kind of re-traumatizing yourself in some ways? Like in my mind, I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? I mean, you're doing it for the kids, yes, but maybe it is lighthearted. Maybe he doesn't feel as traumatized as say what Tony went through. But at the same time, I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, why do you want to do that to yourself? But that's just something that kind of popped into my head as I was watching it.
I think that you're right on one level. I don't think New York traumatized Clint as much as it did Tony. Just because Clint has been doing it much longer than Tony. Even before Tony became Iron Man, Clint has all this training within S.H.I.E.L.D. He's been it was a crazy situation. It's probably a bigger situation than he's ever seen before. Even in that movie, Nat is just like Budapest all over again. And he's like, you and I remember Budapest very differently. So it's probably the biggest event he's ever been in, but it's not going to traumatize him the way that it traumatized Tony and Iron Man 3, just because he was like a regular inventor and a billionaire playboy, and then aliens showed up and he flew to another part of space. But I do think it was traumatizing because when he saw Nat, and I think they actually showed that, because
yes,
they showed when he saw the actress that was portraying Natasha, that definitely brought some angst and trauma up to surface. And not only that, there was a little girl in the audience who was dressed like Natasha as well. So he had to, he kind of had to excuse him. He had to kind of excuse himself. He went to the bathroom, and they had this joke. And someone wrote Thanos is right on the urinal.
And
he's looking at.
Yeah, that would have been triggering for me.
I mean,
been really like.
I mean, they had.
Wow,
They had him. It's difficult to tell what was on his mind, but annoyance, bemusement, amusement. I don't know, but he. I can imagine him being really pissed off about, given what he lost and how
Hmm.
difficult it was for him during the 5 years, and also losing Nat and Tony, and to a certain extent, Steve as well, and people not necessarily appreciating that. But that being said, we've already established in Falcon and the Winter Soldier there are plenty of people who actually believe that, right? There are plenty of people who
Right.
think that it was better off because the resources weren't stretched, the borders kind of were broken down. So I think that the reason that he doesn't fly into a rage is because it's not the first time he's heard it, right? He's probably heard it several
Hmm.
times since the snap since Tony brought everyone back. So
Hmm.
yeah, and then there's someone tries to take a picture with him at a urinal. It's an annoying guy. So like it's obvious that he means that like it's not the greatest time right now because I'm with my kids. He doesn't say that, but the guy just means
Right.
because I don't know, I'm my pants is my zipper is down, right? That's what he interprets that. So when he goes over and washes his hand and he goes over and asks again, it's like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that was it was very very interesting how they show the difference in celebrity and reaction that he gets and the reaction that Sam gets,
Hmm.
because people recognize him, but it doesn't necessarily give him much of anything when in Louisiana anyway. Maybe there would be different reactions to him in New York, but
Hmm.
where he's from, there isn't much. There, I mean, there's recognition, and then also later in the episodes in Baltimore, they they he's recognized, and that gets him out of, I guess, trouble. But when they at first they just see him as a black man until they recognize that he's Falcon. So I did
Hmm.
I saw that and I thought that was pretty interesting how they wrote those how they wrote those two different interactions. Now Clint seems
Yeah.
mostly annoyed by this attention, but I feel like it's
Hmm.
a privilege to be just annoyed by this attention because at least he's being recognized without,
Right.
yeah. So yeah.
But very interesting also, you and I have lived in New York before, and the thing is that it was funny because as he was walking by, um like there was several scenes in which he's like walking through the streets of New York City, and
Mhm.
basically like nobody would come up to him and say like anything. I think that that's kind of accurate and kind of not accurate in some ways, but anyways, I kind of let that pass off yeah, because you do in certain areas in New York City you do bump into like well-known people here and there, like every once in a while you have that chance occurrence. So whether or not people are fanboying or not, it is kind of fascinating to kind of
It's
see.
interesting. They kind of talk about that, right? Because people make jokes about Clint because he's still a Avenger with no powers, but Natasha doesn't have powers either. But whatever. Um, yeah. So they actually talk about that. The fact that in the second episode, when they're going down the street, there aren't people mobbing him because he's not the most
Hmm.
he's not the most famous Avenger. They're
Right.
not making Broadway musicals about him. There wasn't a when Tony died, we saw that on the flight to Europe, there was like a documentary about him and his life that
Right.
in Far From Home. So yeah, they're not gonna do those because he's much more low key and he's also very private. Like the fact that he's even in public with his children is interesting, given that like his the location of his farmhouse is supposed to be like a closely held secret. So I'm not sure why he would. Given that they established that in the past, I guess he's just trying to establish some normalcy for them. Because even though
I guess so.
he was without them, I can imagine reemerging from being gone 5 years, and some people weren't gone. Some of your friends might have been not blipped away, and now they're 5 years older than you. So I guess that's why he's doing it. He's all this whole trip is because of them. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. I found that interesting because he's definitely a very private person, and because he's a very private person, not very flashy. He's not a god like Thor. He's not a man out of time like Cap. And he's not he's not flashy like Tony. He is the most low key Avenger. He mentioned it to Kate that that's Katniss Everdeen. That's not Hawkeye. And she's like, yeah, you just need better branding. He's like,
Branding.
yeah, it's like, yeah. And then he mentions the fact that the action figure sales and also the Halloween costumes are a lot lower. So yeah, I think that's probably why he's not being mobbed. But when people recognize him, they're appreciative. So yeah, I think.
Probably also because he was Rōnin. I remember because during those 5 years, he was Rōnin. So no one knows who he was.
No one knows that he was Rōnin, though. No one knows. No one knows he was Rōnin, though.
But the thing is that he disappeared. So like he disappeared for 5 years. It's kind of like it's like any other celebrity. You disappear for 5 years. You're not in the limelight. You're not in in the relevant conversation. So you're like, oh, you're back. Oh, interesting. And people might remember in some ways.
I get what you're saying, but he keeps trying to retire, and it never sticks, right? He retired at the end of like Age of Ultron, right? And then he was pulled back. Then he's pulled back again into the Civil War, and then he tried to retire again when he was under house arrest, which is why he wasn't in Infinity War, and because that's part of the reason they lost. Like they didn't have the team together. Like so, he showed up in Endgame. He ended up he retired at the end of Endgame, I assume, again, and now he's being pulled back in again. So he keeps trying. So like he doesn't want people to know him. That's why he keeps trying to retire. But yeah,
exactly.
Anyway, so like after we get like I said, Clint and his family in present day celebrating around Christmas time, and then we're introduced to Kate. She is at a private school, I think university, and she's like shooting an arrow as a dare to try to hit the bell tower, and she miscalculates how old the bell tower is. She moves the clapper way too hard, which destabilizes the entire structure, destroying the entire thing. A fun little note that the bell tower was apparently had Obadiah Stane's name on it.
Really?
Yeah, it was like
How did people catch that? That's interesting.
They probably just froze. I mean, there's a pan before she goes up the thing. There's a pan in front of the plaque. So she destroys property, but it's the Stain family. So it's
like it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure her mother's still going to have to pay for it, but I guess it'll have the bishop name on it now. So she gets home. She gets chewed out a little bit by her mother. She freezes her credit cards, and then they go to a charity event, charity auction event, and we find out during that event that just before that, she was away at school. She came back from school, and her mother's boyfriend has moved in, and placed swords all over the place. So, for people who don't know, the guy who's playing Jack Duquesne, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, is Duquesne, I think his name is.
I believe so. I don't quite know actually the pronunciation.
But he in the comics is actually the character Swordsman, who is sort of an anti-hero. He taught Hawkeye everything he knows. I doubt that's going to be the backstory here, because inside of the MCU, Hawkeye is just a shield agent, just to simplify his origins. I think when Hawkeye I think predates Shield by quite a bit. He was one of the original Avengers, so that couldn't have been his origins in the comics. So his original origin was this guy called the Swordsman taught him how to melee fighting. So Hawkeye is a excellent marksman, but as you see in the movies as well, he is accurate with a lot of different weapons, and also he's also a good hand to hand fighter, as you saw when he was Rōnin. He was just a swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
So so she finds out that this guy has moved in. He had swords all over the place. That's kind of a hint to his backstory, I guess. And also the fight that they have later on in episode 2. They have a fencing fight. So they go off to this charity auction, and this is when she finds out that they're getting married by someone else. So Armand tells Armand the Third.
Armand the Third.
Armand the Third tells her that they're getting married, which she didn't know. And he doesn't seem very happy about it. He doesn't like her mother for reasons unknown at this point, even at the end of episode 2. And Jack is his nephew. In the comics, Armand is actually Jack's father. I'm not sure why they made that slight change, but they made that change within the show. So yeah, and later on at the charity event, Kate catches Armand quarreling with his mother and saying that,
I have powerful
plans. I have powerful plans, but he also
mess with me. Yeah, that type of sort.
He also seems to be like insinuating that she's done something wrong, or she's done something. And Kate asks her mother about it, and she says, "Yeah, I don't know." So she follows him into the basement where there's a rich person auction. And earlier, actually, one of the things that I put a mental pin in, you were saying how rich people, these are not normal people; they're rich people. Yes and no. Like so these are normal people, and they're mortals. But it's interesting, what happened in New York. These rich people tend to think that they're more than mortal. They're invincible. And then the New York incident happened. So it would be interesting in a world where actual gods exist, where people who are rich who think they're gods, when actual gods show up, what does that make them feel? How does that make them reorientate themselves in the world? But yeah, we have this rich person auction, similar to what I guess not Peggy Carter. Her niece. What's her name? Her niece's name?
Sharon.
Sharon. She was saying, these rich people, they buy things, the real art. So this is a bunch of stuff from the Avengers compound after it collapsed. So they have Rōnin's sword, and they have the Rōnin suit. They also have it looks like a pterodactyl, not a pterodactyl, a triceratops skull. Which is not supposed to be in anyone's personal collection.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. That was kind of weird.
I think it was just put
that in.
I think it was just a bunch of rare things that you are not supposed to own, in regular society. But these people are rich, so they can do what they think they can do whatever they want to. So I think that's pretty much what they were showing there. In the middle of the auction, there's an explosion, and then we get introduced to the tracksuit mafia, and Kate grabs the Rōnin suit, and Jack grabs the Rōnin sword, which is retractable in a very unrealistic way. The hilt is much smaller than the blade. I'm not sure where it's retracting to, but whatever. It's obviously CGI.
It's more retractable. It's like even more retractable as you go into the compartment, and it's like, it shrinks, and it's like, it just builds out after that.
Maybe in that case the hilt is this thick. Then if it's like getting all parts of the blades, and then maybe the hilt is very very thick. Like
To be honest, maybe it is Stark Tech. I don't know. I mean, he gets all of his toys from Stark, you know.
maybe, but like like I'm not sure that Tony would have armed him with like nanotech while he to allow him to go out and start killing people. It's possible. It's possible he asked for a sword, and then Tony didn't know what he was going to do, and
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's nanotech, then it makes sense. But
Hmm.
if not, even if it's not nanotech, it doesn't like Tony's suit. Nanotech suit doesn't really make sense either, but whatever. Like I said, there's a lot of mass being created out of nowhere, but
Yeah.
whatever. It's comics. So
Yeah.
they puts on the mat the suit, and she starts fighting them, the mafia, which I appreciated the scene for a couple reasons. So she looked a little sloppy, um, and you expect her to be look a little sloppy, even though she's trained. She
Hmm.
won all these medals and everything. It's in competitions, right? She hasn't been in this sort of situation, so she's green. She's done all this training because she wants to be a superhero, and and Hawkeye is her idol. But it's a lot of improvisation. Using her skills, but
Hmm.
expecting things to happen in a certain way, but they're not necessarily working out the exact way that she expects them to. She beats a lot of them up,
Yeah.
but it's obviously like it. They're showing that she's not like they're not trying to show her like a badass. She's just showing her like that she's skilled. She's skilled, and she can hold her own.
Right.
Which I appreciated. I appreciate how they choreographed the thing. It kind of tells a story. I like action sequences that tell a story are the best kind of action sequences. Like just action for action's sake is fine if it's very 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 well done. But it's very difficult to do action in a different way because I mean it's just punching and kicking when you get down to it. But when it's actually saying something, like in Shang-Chi when he was fighting his father, that was saying something. There was a lot of history there. There
Hmm.
was a lot of things going on in the background there. Even when he was beating up when he's fighting the death dealer, they flash back to the death dealer was like beating him. So it's
Hmm.
fighting sequences that actually tell a story are more interesting to watch. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that it was very fascinating that she held her own through that, but it made sense because you saw the opening introduction. I mean, we've seen so many things, Nathan, where a person knows these skills, just like automatically knows these skills, and then like, oh, you have these skills. That's fascinating that you have these skills. Where did you acquire it, or how did you get to it? It makes no sense as to was it because of some magical thing that happened to
yeah,
you that made you to be like that? No, it wasn't. It was just like, oh, just I just had it in me all this time. It's like, no, that's lazy writing. So I think that I do appreciate the fact that she's not fully skilled like say Clint Barton is, but she is
or yeah,
skilled that she had, yeah, or like an Avenger or something like
right,
that, or like Natasha,
right,
but she has some type of fundamentals and,
yeah.
and things like that she can hold her own. And so seeing that introduction at the beginning that she had years of this type of training in order to even get to that point.
Hmm.
Okay, this speaks to the fact that they put some thought into this instead of just like, oh yeah, she's the main character and we just need to have a nice action scene with her kicking butt. And we've seen that so many times in other types of media and other types of forms of entertainment.
Right, yeah. So after I guess the mafia, she beats up the mafia. She leaves. Uh, she defeats them while wearing the Rōnin suit. So they immediately recognize the Rōnin suit because apparently he was terrorizing them just like he was terrorizing all the other uh, uh, criminal outfits around the world. So
Hmm.
she escapes to her apartment after saving one-eyed dog on the
Mm.
street, and that's when the actual I think the news has footage of her saving the dog, and that that footage ends up on the news where Clint actually sees it, and
Yeah.
he gets a bit annoyed that his suit is being used and people someone is running around the streets in it. So he leaves and he goes and he tries to pursue whoever has the suit. So she goes to her apartment after and then she tracks down to she tries to investigate Armand further.
Right.
And then she discovers that Armand is murdered
Mm-hmm.
and in his home while running away from the crime scene. She's cornered by the tracksuit people as well, and this is also when Clint catches up with her.
Mm-hmm.
He so in this case, there's a lot more of them because she held her own because they weren't expecting anyone to be there. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't expecting resistance, but now they know that she's there, and they also know Rōnin by reputation, so they bring a lot more guys. And again, more realistically, she holds her own at the very beginning, but like she's not a trained assassin like Clint or Natasha. So she gets into a car and Clint comes and actually beats them up and pulls her out of the car
Mm-hmm.
to punch her, and then he sees that it's a girl. I think he comments that he said, what are you 18?" And she says 22. He says same thing. He's like,
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. When you get to a certain age, middle aged, they're all the same for the most part.
there's not a big difference between 18
Yeah,
and
that's not
22.
doing but when you're young, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, you in your mind you say there's a big difference, but you thinking back from when I was 18 to 22, there wasn't a lot of difference
No, no, not
between
really.
18 and 22. I mean, you can be 18 and be in high school depending on where you what month you're born in. So that I guess that's a difference. But and in 22 you should be graduating from college. So
Hmm.
there's a little bit of an experience, but you're still figuring your stuff out.
Yeah, pretty much.
When you're that young. Um, so that yeah, then we transition to episode 2. Uh, Kate takes him back to her apartment, and uh, but she went back to her apartment to take the dog there in the first place, and someone saw her. So the Tracksuit Mafia knows where she lives, and
Hmm.
they start throwing Molotov cocktails into her house, into her apartment, and they have a cool, quick, quick reaction from Clint. We actually see the difference between like his level of training and her level of training. Like she was trained for competitions. He was trained for the field. Like it's how
Hmm.
quickly he reacts to the getting the Molotov cocktail and throwing it right back. And in the same scene, we see how green she is still because she shoots the fire extinguisher where she thinks like she has like half of an idea, but she doesn't realize that it's under pressure. It's just gonna go all over the place. It's not gonna do what she wants it to do. So like yeah, it's similar to the bell tower thing. She has half an
Yeah,
idea, but she doesn't have the experience or the wisdom to understand whether or not that idea is actually going to work out properly.
right.
So yeah, they leave and they have to leave without the suit. Um, they go to a safe house, which is her aunt's house.
Hmm.
And Barton sends his children home the next morning. And then Kate goes to her mom's office, which is a security company, which is how she found Armand. By the way, she put some
Hmm.
like when they split up earlier on. We were talking about when they were walking past the Times Square people, the
Hmm.
Times Square heroes. So
Hmm.
this is when they kind of part ways, and he gives her a burner phone. Um, and apparently she installed some software or something on his phone because that's how she uses it to find him later on. And that's the same software that she used to find Armand as well because it triangulates the position.
Hmm.
So it's unclear how her mother. It's unclear whether or not the security company existed before her father died, or it existed after she was able to get the insurance money
Hmm.
from his death. Because you notice that they haven't moved out of the house that they needed to sell. Um,
Yes.
yeah, her mother's a bit shady. It seems. So is Jack, but I think Jack is a misdirect.
Yeah.
I think Jack is a misdirect. I think Kate just doesn't like him because she doesn't want anyone replacing her daddy, but
Hmm.
she's not paying attention to her mom,
Right.
and yeah, because
Yeah, I think.
her mom's a little
Yeah,
shady.
she reminds me a little bit of if people remember the Defenders, the Netflix show, The Defenders. She reminds me a little bit of the Sigourney Weaver character
Hmm.
in that movie. In that she's kind of shady, she's kind of gray in some areas as well. So
Hmm.
you don't really know what her intentions were. Although they didn't really flesh it out that well, if I remember correctly, from the
Yeah, the
Defenders.
Defenders
Like they couldn't
was
really didn't
the
flesh it out very well, her character, but it kind of reminded me of that. Even the way that she dressed in red all the time, it kind of reminded me of that.
yeah, the Defenders was in the worst season of those Netflix shows, but it was one of the less well written. So it wasn't as bad as the first season of like Iron Fist or anything. But they kind of ham fisted them together. I mean, they wanted to put them together. That was the plan in the first from the beginning. But yeah, they didn't write her. They it was a little bit of a waste of Sigourney Weaver, and hopefully what they'll do, even though I think they're going to bring back Matt Murdock and some other people from those Netflix shows, what they'll probably say is that those people existed in a different universe, and
Hmm.
just that Matt Smith, the Matt Murdock from this universe, kind of looks like the same Matt Murdock. So maybe they can find another role for Sigourney Weaver to actually use all her acting skills, because I don't I think that I think there was a very similar part, like you said, but it
Hmm.
was underwritten in that show.
Right.
Yeah. So Clint tries to track down the suit after the fire, and he notices that the fire truck has a LARPing thing. So there's this whole sequence with him having to get his suit back without violence by playing along with his LARPing thing. This fireman who's like, you're a real superhero. Can just let me kill you. It's like
When yeah, exactly.
it's funny because like he's saying you're a real superhero, but as the woman said at the beginning, like these people are like firemen and
Fireman.
and policemen,
Yeah.
so they're sort of heroes too. So like, but
Yeah, that
yeah,
didn't make any sense to me. But also the fact that it's funny in that he kind of played along with it. I think some people I saw online that really didn't like it, but I didn't really like that whole bit. It just kind of took away from the story in some
I
ways.
don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I mean he could have beat them up and take he could he and like but like he has a very public persona. Like it's you
Right.
can do a lot of things when you're not known publicly. You're known publicly, and then like the entire world knows that you acted poorly. So like, if the guy was very intransigent about it, I think he probably would have gotten more direct and more rough with him. But like, if there's a way to solve the issue without violence, I mean, what was he going to do? Push down the woman at the beginning, like beat up that woman, like the civilian, like he was going to do that. So he was like step by step to get into the event. He had to play nice, and then when he got to the event, he wasn't going to play around. The only reason that he played along is because they said if you're cut in the stomach, you're out. So he had to get to the guy. So he had to play along in to get to the guy. And then he just asked straight out, and the guy said, if you continue to play around. So again,
Mhm.
he could have beat people up around the way, but he wouldn't have been a hero if he beat people up to get what he wanted.
It's true.
So I don't know. I think it was cute, and also it showed like the level of skill even though these people firefighters and whatchamacallit, they don't do this stuff. So like
Okay.
they were all trying to like jump on him because they probably recognized his face, but yeah, he was able to easily hit all of them at the same time, and
Yeah.
to cut give them belly blows, and yeah, it was, I don't know, it was a cute whatchamacallit, and they also shot it in slow mo, like Marvel doesn't do slow mo all that often. It's they're not like I mean, they do it from time to time, but it's not, they're not like Snyder heavy with the slow mo.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah, it did remind me a little bit of like a WWE type of thing going, but
yeah,
I mean, sometimes you do need that type of lightheartedness. I mean, and I didn't really have any big issue with it. I mean, he was trying to play it, like you said, he was trying not to play the bad guy.
hmm
He followed all the rules and things like that. He could have just like said, move out of the way
yeah.
and do
And
something.
then he would have been on
Yeah,
the news later on,
exactly,
and also
exactly. He just kind of went along.
and also they're saying that he's heroes, but it's like he would have beat up a bunch of firemen and policemen. It wouldn't have been a good
True.
look. It wouldn't have been
Mhm.
good look at all. So yeah.
Correct.
So after the LARPing thing, he gets the suit back, and later on that day, Kate is having dinner with her mother Eleanor and Jack, and she insinuates that he had something to do with the murder. During the dinner, and then they have the sword fight where he pretends that he doesn't know what he's doing, uh, but then she tries to slice at his face. Like she's it's obvious to her because she's fought other people that he's letting her win. And then we get a shot of him giving her butterscotch candy, which is obviously Armand's butterscotch candy. But again, she saw Armand's monogram on butterscotch candy, which is a ridiculous rich person thing to do, but whatever. But like, it's his uncle. He could have gotten that at any time whatsoever. It's that couldn't didn't doesn't necessarily have to be that. It's not like butterscotch spoils. He could have at any time in the last like 10 years, and it would have been the same. It would have been
Mm,
the same butterscotch. So I think that they're trying to point at him, and like I said, she's very suspicious of him. But I think the twist is going to be is that it's her mother, or
hmm
her mother is shady as well.
hmm
So they duel. Let me see the notes here. Not allowing. Oh yes. So they duel, and then we jump over to a conversation that Clint has with his wife about having to stay in the city. He's going to miss his flight. He's going to do the catch and release thing. So he got caught on purpose to get to the big person. So
hmm
he's in the chair, very similar to the way that
Natasha was. Yep.
Natasha was at the
Mhm.
beginning of the Avengers.
Right.
And she thinks that he's in trouble, which is whatever. He's an Avenger, but sure, she thinks that he's in trouble, and she tracks him down using her phone, and very clumsily jumps into the scene because they know her name.
hmm
So they now all think that Kate Bishop is Rōnin,
Ronan,
they
yeah.
want revenge. So she tracks down his location, and she falls through the the skylight, and she gets captured too. And I mean, and during this conversation, he's like, "Just tell me your boss," and he shows that he can get out of the binds very easily.
hmm
And then we see Maya Lopez, and Maya Lopez is Echo. And
hmm
if you caught our stream, I think 2 Fridays ago, on Disney Plus Day, we're going to get an Echo show. So it
hmm
seems like she's the head of this group right now, but Echo also in the comics is sort of an anti-hero. She's kind of, to give you a little bit of backstory, she is Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin's adoptive daughter. She has skills very similar to Taskmaster in that she has like eidetic memory, like she has photographic memory where she can pick up people's the way people fight. And she's also a deaf character as well. So and they actually show that she's deaf here, um, uh, at the end here. So I'm interested. It's a good place to end. I think if they had just dropped one episode, I would have been more annoyed. So I appreciate the 2 episodes, even though, like I said, there are slow parts in both of these episodes. So yeah,
Right. I mean, they only dropped it because of Star Wars. So that's the only reason why they did it, because they couldn't. They basically just they just had to decide that they had 6 episodes. They had 6 weeks, but they only had 5 weeks before they had to release Star Wars. So
I don't
that's
know,
why
but
they had.
Star Wars is
Yeah.
going to be released on Fridays, right?
But I don't see the thing is that they probably didn't want to coincide with it, even though you're releasing, something on Wednesday and then you're releasing Star Wars. They're probably two big properties. Like,
I
I
don't.
mean, the
I don't know.
yeah,
I think that at a certain point they're going to have shows on at the same time. I mean, that's what every other streaming service and also television network does. Having different shows
sure,
on at the same time is fine, as long as you
yeah,
separate them from with a couple days. I understand that they want people talking about the show, but if you separate it with a
right,
day from Wednesday to Friday, you can have people talking about the show for 48 hours, and then they're talking about the next show for the weekend. Um,
yeah.
I actually thought there was going to be an overlap. I thought
Mm.
that I have to go look at the schedule, but I thought there was going to be an overlap with the Book of Boba Fett, but maybe there isn't.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think that was maybe the reason, but I'm not 100% sure. But
yeah,
at the same time, I think that Disney Plus is still looking to increase their content levels, and not like Netflix where they get like 3 or 4 things at once
yeah.
coming out on Fridays.
I don't need
Yeah,
Disney Plus to be Netflix, but I think they
right.
can they can juggle more than one show a week, and they did. They
Sure,
had the Bad Batch on at the same time that they had Loki on,
they
so
did.
they can juggle more than one show and maybe even more than 2 shows a week, and I think that they put a lot more money into their shows. So these prestige shows, because like to be honest, they actually do release more than one thing a week. They're just like Disney Channel level stuff.
Right, exactly.
Someone just commented on the whatchamacallit, the YouTube thing. I turn legal.
Oh, I think it's a troller. Sorry, it's
Okay.
probably not something that's appropriate actually for this channel.
Okay. All right. All
Yeah.
right. Any other final thoughts before we?
I think that overall it's definitely a very good, like I said in the beginning, a very solid start. I'm looking to kind of see what transpires. They have definitely a lot of mysteries to be left unsolved, just like any other Marvel show that you see,
Mhm.
and get you hooked onto it and watch the rest of it. I mean, is it like one of those series where you want to watch it all at the same time? Probably not, because it is close to an hour long, like 45 minutes to 50 minutes, just like a Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Mhm.
So you probably don't want to binge it. Just like I mean, WandaVision might have been a little easier to binge because it was 30-minute episodes,
Mhm.
but for this one you're probably going to have to split it up a little bit, and to kind of watch it. To kind of watch it in its entirety is probably going to take away from it. I think that there's already a lot that you can again talk about, even after one episode, or even now. I mean, for this one it was 2 episodes, so
Mhm.
fascinating to see what the other 4 episodes are going to be like.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. We got, like you said, only 6 episodes, so we got 1/3 of the show already. So we shall see. I am interested to see if Wilson Fisk shows up, since his adoptive daughter in the comics showed up. There's a lot of talk that Vincent D'Onofrio is going to show up. There's also talk that actually there's not just talk there. I mean, now that we're in the spoiler section, if you go to the IMDb page, Yelena is going to show up in at least 4 episodes, because that's what IMDb says. IMDb is not always accurate, but we know she's going to show up, based upon what we saw at the end of the Black Widow movie, and also,
Mhm.
as I mentioned at the top during the spoiler-free section, they specifically put Yelena at the end of the Hawkeye package, as well. So so you're not confused about who she is.
Mhm.
Um, when she shows up. You don't necessarily have to see Black Widow, but that Hawkeye Legends thing will kind of catch you up on who she is. So yeah.
Right.
All right. So that is what we think about the episode. We will be back here next week talking about the next episode, and probably Friday as well to talk about the Wheel of Time. But we want to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below, like and subscribe for more conversations like this, and we will see you next time. All right, bye. Thanks.
Bye.